Welcome to Blue Marble Defender story number 28, The Puppet Master. Chapter 1, A Mystery Takes Shape. The Defenders were living in Bondi Beach, a suburb of Sydney, Australia, where Pops was helping local police investigate reports of extraterrestrials starting wildfires. The sky was blue and the temperature was pleasant, but today was Down Under's windiest winter morning. Were swaying, dust swirls were walking up the street, and clothes were flying off the clothesline when Mom walked in the front door carrying a bag of groceries. Leo sprinted over, grabbed a bag, brought it to the kitchen, and started removing the contents. Mom said, "Leo, when you're done, would you go out front and get that red plastic bag that blew up into the tree?" Always happy for an excuse to climb trees, or climb anything for that matter. Leo nodded, and a few minutes later he was out the door. While he stood on the sidewalk, scoping out the best way to get to the bag, a lady in a black coat and veil passed. She stopped, looked back, and followed his gaze up toward the tree. She looked like a neighbor down the street, but Leo wasn't sure. They hadn't lived there long. "Bags in the trees," she said. "Just one more strange thing around here." Then, pointing at the house next to Leo's, she said, "I've seen the man who lives there talking to your father. Your father seems to be nice, but I'm not so sure about the other man. Did you ever wonder what he does in there? He's at it late at night. Sometimes he makes a lot of noise. Then before the sun comes up, trucks arrive and they take away his packages." Leo said, "Gee, I never noticed." Walking away, the lady turned and added, "Maybe you don't notice because your father's office faces your neighbor, and he's the only one in your family who stays up that late." Leo stared blankly, wondering what he was supposed to do with that information. He shook his head and walked to his workshop, letting Mom's request slip from his mind. Later, when Rookie and Leo were on their way to play an afternoon game of wiffle ball, a vaguely familiar-looking man with a mustache crossed the street toward them. The man raised his finger in the air, signaling he wanted to talk. He faced both boys squarely, rumped in a grumpy manner, and said, "Young man, I know your father works at the university. Does he mention the thefts of expensive scientific equipment I've heard of? I'm a taxpayer. My money was used to buy that equipment, and I think it's scandalous that the thief or thieves have not been caught and punished." Both Rookie and Leo shrugged and raised their hands to show they knew nothing about it. The man harumphed, turned abruptly, recrossed the street, and walked away. When they returned from playing, Leo told Pops what the man had said, and Pops replied, "Gee, that's the first I've ever heard about it." The next day, as the boys headed for the ball field after school, Leo told Rookie about the lady in a black veil and her worry about noise in the neighbor's house. Pointing down the street, Rookie said, "If it was the lady who lives over there, it's likely she's just lonely and looking to strike up a conversation. Next time you see her, you can be a nice neighbor, Leo, and chat with her. Tell her about how I whipped your butt this afternoon." "Well, maybe you shouldn't. She probably won't be interested because it's such an everyday event." Leo just shook his head and didn't dignify the would-be joke with a response. Leo batted first and got off to a big lead with a grand slam home run. Pardon me, Rookie batted first and got the grand slam. But Leo's pitching found the groove, and his own hitting fired up, and he fought back to a tie. As they were approaching their house, a young girl they didn't recognize came skipping toward them. She stopped as they passed and said, "Isn't it funny that your father and the man next door, they both wear Boston Red Sox baseball caps, even though Boston is thousands of miles from here." Then she skipped away. The boys looked at each other, shrugged, and continued home. The moment they walked in the gate, they were hit by a blizzard of paper swirling around the yard, apparently because the wind had blown over a trash can. They picked sheets off the ground and jumped to catch others swirling above them. And as they stuffed them back into the trash can, they noticed equipment usage guides and invoices and other things related to scientific equipment. Rookie looked at one, shook his head, and said to Leo, "These papers make me feel like a mystery is creeping into our house. Do you think Pops could be involved in something? Something he wouldn't want to talk about?" Who answered, "Are you thinking about that guy saying equipment is being stolen from the university?" "Really?" Well, Rookie nodded, and Leo said, "Hey, I'm sure it's nothing. Let's not bring it up. It might make Pops feel like we don't trust him." When the boys were preparing for bed that night, Leo said, "So, Rook, I've been thinking about your comment about a mystery coming into our house. Yesterday, Pop said he doesn't know anything about the theft, so we'll just leave it at that, right?" Rookie shrugged and nodded his agreement. But Leo's remark told him the matter was still on his mind, too. The next afternoon, when the boys were walking home from school, the grouchy mustached man came walking down the street toward them. This time he was wearing a hat and using a cane. Using the cane, he had his arm outstretched so far it took the entire sidewalk. As the boys walked around him, he said, "Have you figured it out yet? Which one's the puppet? Which one's the puppet master? Your father or your neighbor?" The boys looked at each other, rolled their eyes, and continued toward home without answering. Just before reaching their gate, both stopped and noted 5 or 6 wooden crates stashed next to their neighbor's house right under Pop's laboratory window. Ricky had his hand on the gate's latch when a police car approached. The 2 policemen inside locked their eyes on them as they passed very, very slowly. All of a sudden, the lady in black was standing at the gate next to them. "You boys should pay attention." Walking away, she pointed to the police car and added, "That shouldn't surprise you." Leo joined Rookie in his bedroom that evening. They worried through what they'd heard and seen in the past few days and again asked themselves if Pops could possibly be involved with their neighbor in a scheme. Neither thought so, but they were detectives and they went over the clues over and over. So many coincidences, so much circumstantial evidence. The boys talked until it was late, and when they finally got into their beds, both slept poorly. Chapter 2: A Mystery Explained. The next morning was Saturday, and Mom, Pops, Leo, and Rookie were finishing a leisurely breakfast when Leo felt he just had to ask about the matter. "Pops, I got a question." "Sure, Leo, what's up?" "I mentioned before about scientific equipment going missing from the university, and, well, some more kind of unsettling things have come up. Equipment instructions and invoices blowing out of our garbage can, and a police car driving slowly down the street and studying our house and our neighbors. Um, Pops, is there something going on we should know about?" Pop said, "What do you mean?" Uh, well, uh, might you know more than you mentioned about this missing equipment thing?" "Oh," Pop said, "you're asking if I'm stealing equipment from the university." Pop's question cut through the boy's chest like a thunderbolt. Rookie jumped in. Hey, he just means that there seems to be some circumstantial evidence or something suspicious going on. That's all." Rookie looked down, pursed his lips, and then raised his eyes toward Pops. Mom and Leo turned their eyes toward Pops, too. Pop stared down at his breakfast, and then he closed his eyes. He put his hand on his forehead and ran it along the top of his head, down the back of his head, and held onto his neck for a long time. Then he pushed his chair back, stood abruptly, and said in a serious tone, "Everybody, please follow me into the living room." Pop stood in the center of the room and waved the others to sit on the sofa. Their eyes were riveted on him in anticipation. Pop stood tall. He raised his fist, clenched his teeth, and he grimaced fiercely. Without warning, he dropped to the floor, took a prone position, pounded the floor with his outstretched arms, kicked his feet, and screamed, "Arrgh!" Then he became still, raised his head, and took a dozen deep breaths. Mom, Leo, and Rookie tensely watched, anxious about what he'd do next. Then Pops pulled his right hand under his chest and proceeded to do 40 one-armed push-ups. He exhaled loudly each time he raised himself up. Then he pulled both knees forward, bounded up with a flourish of outstretched arms, and shouted, "Apophenia! Apophenia!" Then he stood mute, facing the sofa. Time seemed frozen. After a bit, Mom broke the silence, saying, "Boys, after you mentioned comments you'd heard about thefts at the university, their head of security happened to attend a class I was giving. And when we were on a break, I asked him about it. He said no thefts had been reported in years, but that recently one very expensive electron microscope was not accounted for during an equipment audit. That prompted deep concern and an intense investigation. But last week, he discovered the microscope had been loaned to the university in Melbourne, but not properly recorded in the equipment inventory." Looking directly at the boys, she added, "Not only was Pops not involved in any plot to steal equipment, none was ever stolen. Now, as for why Pops put on this dramatic performance, boys, you'll have to ask him." Leo and Rookie looked at Pops. He took a deep Shakespearean bow, rose, opened his hands in front, and said, "I wanted this bit of drama to make a memorable moment for you. Why? Why, you may ask? Well, because one of the biggest risks for a police detective, a research scientist, or a blue marble defender is apophenia." "What is apophenia, you may ask? Well, think of it as an image in a cloud. You might spot a whale or a fish there, or Godzilla or whatever, but it's really just wisps of water vapor at a great distance away, and your imagination has created it. It's not reality." Way. Apophenia is the tendency to perceive a connection or meaningful pattern between unrelated or random things. I know you've watched TV police dramas where the hero detective growls, "I don't believe in coincidences, so I'm going to get to the bottom of this." And of course, then he goes on to solve the mystery before the advertisements come on. Well, that's just TV. In reality, there are lots of coincidences, and just because two things happen at nearly the same time doesn't mean they're connected. People often jump to assign meaning. Being quick and wrong can cause problems and waste time, especially if they imagine one thing is the cause of the other. Being trained to find patterns and connections, police and defenders need to check themselves. Boys, I suggest you find time to review how you made connections and wove them into suspicion. Ask yourselves which were facts, innuendos, coincidences, or assumptions. Then do some research on analytical methods, on research on weighing facts, and research on assessing circumstantial evidence. Here's the thing. Good guys are not the only ones who understand apophenia. If a suspect realizes you're onto her, she may see a breadcrumb trail, a trail going the other direction, the wrong direction, counting on your apophenia for time to escape. When you've connected dots into a pattern, your satisfaction and pride of finding that pattern may trap you into following the wrong lead. So once again, methods and discipline can prevent you from being played by a suspect. You may now be asking yourself, okay, what should I have done differently when I encountered those clues? Should I have not questioned good old Pops? Hey, I'll answer for you. There were lots of random hints that gave reasons to be suspicious. You had no facts, but you were worried. The clues hinted at wrongdoing, but you didn't want to ask and offend me. But the clues just kept coming and you couldn't ignore them. Something untoward that demanded your attention might be afoot. So you questioned me in a non-accusing way, and you were sensitive to my feelings. So my evaluation is, you guys did a good job. I think you handled things in just the right way when it concerned a person you've known and trusted for a long time, and I would have done the same thing if the tables were turned. But now, in a quiet moment, consider the effect emotions have on your analysis and what you might have done if the suspect wasn't your dear old Pops. Okay, enough with the lecture on detection. Leo was glad the lecture was over. He wanted to escape before Pop started any more theatrics, too. Thanks, Pops. Will do, he said. And turning to his brother, he immediately followed with, Hey, Rook, want to go throw the frisbee around? Rookie nodded. Leo grabbed the frisbee from a garage shelf, and the two were out the door in a flash. Chapter 3. Another side of the mystery. Leo was opening the front gate, frisbee in hand, when he looked up, saw the red bag in the tree, and said, Hey, just a minute, Rook. I gotta climb up and take down that bag. Hey, hold on, Leo, Rook said. Maybe I can knock it down with the disc. And with that, Rookie grabbed the frisbee from Leo's hand, took aim, and flung it. Ow! Don't do that! Came a high-pitched, squeaky voice. I didn't do anything. It was my brother. Rookie and Leo were astonished. The red bag was talking. They looked at each other, thinking it was stupid to pose questions to a piece of polyethylene, but Leo yelled, What's going on up there? Are you more than a plastic bag? Yes, 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 please don't hurt me. Hey, I'll climb up and get you out of there. No, please don't. Please don't. I'll come down, but I want to go back later. Leo said, Whatever. The thing floated down toward the boys, and what they thought was a wind-blown plastic bag morphed into a kind of a red maple leaf without a stem, roughly a meter in diameter and a meter in height. And as it settled vertically in the air facing them, they realized what had appeared to be a bag's ragged edges were points of varying depths on the outside margin of a leaf. The leaf had a bulge in the middle with two protruding round fish-like eyes and a slit of a mouth in a near semicircle in shape. It kind of gave it a perpetual grin. Ribs and thin veins radiated from the bulge. The boys saw no nose or equivalent and thought they knew it could hear, but they couldn't see any ears. The boys were speechless as they studied this gravity-defying creature floating in front of them. After a moment, it said in its squeaky voice, Please pardon my difficulties with your language. I've studied it, and its complexity is not a problem, but this is the first time I've tried to speak it. Leo and Rookie remained bewildered and just continued to stare. My name is best translated into your language as Mud Pie. My home is on a distant arm of what you call the Milky Way galaxy. We call our star Splat because our planet is very close to it and its heat and light smack us and would melt us if we didn't hide in the middle of the day. I know splat is not an attractive word in your language, and I do prefer the name sun you give to your star. We call our planet bread because we eat its minerals and soil. We call ourselves flubs because our ancestors, like many flubs today, were jokers. They said nature had been in the process of evolving us inhabitants into absolutely perfect beings, but then nature flubbed up by giving us a less than perfect, less than pleasant disposition. Disgusted, it gave its attention to other worlds. May I know how to address each of you? Rookie shrugged and said, My name is Rookie and my brother is Leo. Ah, so you are brothers. That's what I thought. It happens that I am visiting your planet with my brother. I'll tell you more about him, but first let me explain a few things. Our planet is very old and we flubs have existed for over 1 billion of your years, far, far longer than you humans. We were fortunate to have evolved with adaptable bodies. Out of the margins of my body, I can adjust the size and shape of the pointed parts we call blades and make them into hands and fingers. I could make legs if I wanted to. Do you want me to show you? Both look, both Leo and Rookie shook their heads no. Okay, I'll tell you more and hope not to bore you. Each day we eat small amounts of the dusty crust of bread. Since food is easy to get, we've been free to put all our effort into what you call science. Science allowed us flubs, to engineer new capabilities for our bodies, study how the universe works, and build equipment and tools. From what I've seen, the biggest difference between you humans and us flubs is you haven't discovered the secrets of gravity as we did 50 million years ago. We built them into mechanisms into our body that allow me to float here. We can also travel great distances quickly. If you look up at the top of that telephone pole, you will see a small ship. Leo and Rookie squinted into the sun and saw a metal object the size and shape of an American football. Both my brother and I can shrink down, easily fit into it, and zip from star to star. My brother is called Bolthead. He's a lifelong jokester, following the tradition of many other flubs. But, well, he's actually a lot worse than most. We're traveling now because our parents kicked us out. They told us to go annoy somebody else, go explore the galaxy, and don't return home until we're ready to cut out the joking. Well, I grew out of it. I grew out of it quickly, and now I'm trying to keep Bolthead from causing trouble. I have to contain the damage he does with his jokes. Since our parents kicked us out, we visited 1,200 planets orbiting 1,000 stars. Both his jokes got us chased off 500 planets and put into jail on 200. One planet even buried us in a hole. It was close call, and we were lucky to escape. This trip has been long, even though our ship travels at 60% of the speed of light. Fortunately, we flubs know how to hibernate, so the 68,000 light years we've traveled so far haven't been unbearable. I'm still young for a flub, about 6,000 years old in your years, but if you add in the total time I've been in hibernation, I'm 74,000 years old. Leo, Rookie, Do you have any questions before I tell you about Bolthead? The boys shook their heads, and Mudpie continued. He loves to play complicated games, and his great skills are imagining ways to influence people, and he's a great at play acting. His favorite games are ones that trick beings like you humans into doing what you're certain is clever and right, only to find out later that you've been stupid. His favorite saying is, when beings play games, it's boring. When games play beings, it's fun. The boys hadn't expected to receive so much information on their way to play frisbee, especially from a maple leaf. Rookie said, That's an interesting story, but why were you up in the tree? We were flying past your street when Bolthead said he'd spotted his next target. He always is on the lookout for families of happy, logical beings, and he gets his jollies by finding ways to make them fight amongst themselves. He doesn't tell me what he's up to because he knows I'll interfere. I've been in the tree watching for trouble and trying to figure out how to protect you because Bolthead always brings you trouble. When he can't trick beings into fighting each other, he loses the game. He hates losing, and when he does, he blames his target and punishes them. Perhaps you didn't realize it, but he's been playing you for a few days now, pulling your strings through play acting and hoping to make you distrust your family members and become outraged with their behavior. When he does these things, I hate to admit I'm his brother. We're the same age, so he should act like an adult. But his head is missing a bolt or something. He told me this morning he's about to win the game. My advice to you is to play act becoming angry with each other. That way he'll think he won. He'll be satisfied and move on. Whatever you do, don't work through the challenges of his game, and don't stay happy. That will frustrate him and he'll punish you with outrageous tricks. Leo said, Wow, Mudpie, you've given us a lot to digest and one particular big worry. Rookie jumped in, saying, It's pretty clear Bolt has been playing with us. Has he been trying to trick us into accusing our father of stealing? Mudpie gave the flub equivalent of a nod by flapping the apex of his leaf blade over his face. And Rookie continued, You mentioned play acting. He's been impersonating humans and giving us false clues, right? Mudpie nodded, and Leo said, Uh-oh. With our father's help, we sorted through his false clues. Unfortunately, all's well in our house. Who'd ever believe that's unfortunate? But there's no yelling, no fighting. Mudpie flapped both his left and right leaf blades over his face and squeaked, Oh, no! Rookie asked, Can you elaborate for us on what to expect now? He'll play inane, doltish tricks depending on what tools are available. I should mention I got my name because I frustrated him in one of his games. When I was just a young flub, he started one. I figured it out. I laughed at him, and then he hit me in the face with a mud pie. Leo said, Oh, sorry. Is there any way we can protect ourselves? Probably not. He's stealthy, and he can fit into our tiny spaceship or become big enough to pick up and shake your house. He can also become invisible. Invisible to you, but also invisible to me. Chapter 4. The Puppet Master. Mudpie floated up to the top of the tree, and the boys walked slowly to the sports field. They brainstormed how to defeat a creature able to take on different personas, defy gravity, shrink, grow, and become invisible. But no bright ideas arrived. When the boys returned home, they saw Mudpie still in the tree. He opened the gate and walked to the house. Rookie was ahead and noticed the front door was ajar. Figuring the wind had blown it open, he barged in, and a big plastic bucket of water fell on his head and drenched him. Leo was right behind, but he stayed dry, and he couldn't stop laughing. Look, you look like a drowned rat. But he barely got his words out when he stepped on a bar of soap sitting on the wet floor and fell hard on his butt. Arrgh! Looks like Bolthead has started his war already. Mom and Pops had been in the kitchen chatting and rushed to the doorway when they heard the commotion. Leo looked up from his ignominious position and said, "Let's all go into the living room, shall we? Rookie and I have some things to tell you." The parents listened as the boys explained. The room was silent as their minds roared into action. Any other family on Earth would have been shocked, outraged, and frightened by being the target of a bizarre extraterrestrial. They would have called the police, called the National Guard, or called the Blue Marble Defenders. But being the Blue Marble Defenders themselves, this family had to figure out what to do on their own. Mom nodded her head and said softly, "Well, at least these flubs aren't murderers or worse." Pop said, "True. But he started the war with a gag on the balancing water on bucket on the door. But I don't know how much more we can get. I mean, it can get worse and worse. The name Bolthead represents his character pretty well, but I bet each of us could come up with a nastier name." Leo said, "My guess is we're in for a long-term joke fest. Mud Pie says Bolthead's the product of a long line of jokesters, and he hasn't grown up, not in 74,000 years." Rookie added, "If he hits us with just a few basic practical jokes, we'll be okay. But for now, can we put this aside and cook some dinner? I'm hungry." Mom said, "Okay, but first I'll scan you both for contaminants. The flubs may not be evil, but they could have unknowingly brought us some harmful microbes from their far arm of the galaxy." The next morning, Pop's foot was the first victim as he pushed his toe into his shoe and popped a water balloon. Mom was preparing to give her yoga class when she found her tennis shoes tied together. Leo couldn't find his school book, searched and searched, and he found it and his homework in Rookie's wastebasket. Rookie went to brush his teeth, found toothpaste covering the bathroom mirror, returned to get dressed, and found his t-shirts were all tied in knots. After hearing everybody's story at breakfast, Pop said, "Well, we seem to have survived the first salvo of his tricks. Bolted must have more to throw at us, but let's hope it's not a lot worse." The house was calm during the day. The family spent a quiet evening reading and went to bed hopeful. The next morning, everybody was surprised. There were no incidents to report, and Rookie said, "Gee, maybe Mud Pie convinced his brother to move on. I hope so, but I have to admit that part of me wanted to see what other tricks he had up his leafy sleeve." School classes started at the same time Mom and Pops were heading to meetings, so all four arrived at the front door at the same time. Mom was in front, but she couldn't open the door. Pop said, Yes, understandable. Between this week's wind and last week's rain, the door frame must have warped." He pushed the handle with one hand and put his shoulder and pushed the door, but it didn't move. Then he pushed with all his strength, and it yielded only kind of like a soft tearing sound, and it opened a very tiny crack. Leo went under Pop's arms, got down on his knee, looked through the crack, and said, "Looks like this door is blocked by white cloth or paper or something." Rookie darted into the garage, returned with a 30-centimeter long machete that he used to trim backyard bushes, and pushed it through the crack. He saw it back and forth, but made no progress. Leo fetched a handsaw. He sawed up and then he sawed down until Pop said, Hey, Leo, I think you've unblocked it. Leo, Rookie, put your shoulders to the door and push with me when I count 1, 2, 3. It opened and everybody rushed out to see what was going on. The entire house was white. It had been wrapped all around from doorstep to the roof with toilet paper. Oh my, this will take hours to clean up, Mom exclaimed. The boys looked at each other and chuckled in appreciation of the gag. But Mom and Pops weren't amused, and Pops said, well, if you guys think this is so funny, we're assigning you to clean it all up. Best to get on the job right after school because rain is in the forecast for tomorrow morning. And that'll make a huge mess and make the job 3 times harder. Whew. If Leo and Rookie hadn't enlisted their friends to help and take a bag of toilet paper home, each one of them for their own trash pickup, the work wouldn't have been done until midnight. At the dinner table that evening, Pop said, the amusement is gone in this, and I'm past tolerating Bolthead's game. He's at war with us, and we have to start fighting. The Chinese general Sun Tzu wrote in his treatise, The Art of War. He wrote that 5,000 years ago, but his message still stands. If you can't win a battle if you don't know your enemy. Mom jumped in saying, why don't you boys go out and ask Mud Pie for more about Bolthead? Any information would be useful, especially things like, what's his favorite food here on Earth and what does he hate most in life? The boys agreed and headed for the tree. Ricky saw he hadn't moved and called up, Mud Pie, could you come down and talk with us for a minute? The top branch fluttered and he immediately floated down. Mud Pie, Mud Pie hovered in front of the boys and said, I'm glad to see you, Rookie and Leo. I wish I'd been able to warn you about Bolthead wrapping your house, but he saw us talking earlier and it took great precautions to not reveal his plan. Leo said, we're hoping you can tell us more about Bolthead so we can know what to expect next. We'd ideally like to dissuade him from continuing this game. Mud Pie replied, you can expect Bolthead to intensify his gags. Unlike other flub tricksters, he insists on winning every game or punishing the target, no matter how long it takes. Rookie said, that is worrisome, but it's good to know. Thanks. Can you tell us about his likes and dislikes, such as does he have a favorite food here on Earth, and what activities or situations does he hate? Mud Pie said, I'll tell you everything I can, but don't be optimistic about dissuading him. No other target ever has. So even though he brought enough crust from bread to feed us for the whole trip, Bolt had tasted and liked a plant here called a Brussels sprout. The thing he hates most is getting dirty. He threw very few mud pies because he had to wash up after every one. Thanks, Leo said. One more question. Is there a way to detect his presence when he's invisible? Unfortunately, he alone controls when he turns visible or invisible. Let me think. Oh, I have a bad memory, and I hope that helps you. When I was very young and playing while invisible, a wind arose and blew me against a wall. The surprise and shock made me visible without my wanting it. Rookie said, thanks, Mud Pie. We'll go back inside now and see what Bolda does to us overnight. Best of luck, boys. Do what you can. Do what you can to enjoy his games. Leo and Rookie told Mom and Pops what Mud Pie had said, but all were too tired to stay up late and strategize. They slept well, but next morning they wished they'd posted a guard. Spaceships, dinosaurs, and buildings. They no longer sat on shelves in Leo's room. All of Leo's Lego brick creations had been dismantled and the bricks were piled together on the floor. Mom, she detected a very unpleasant odor in the house. She followed it to the kitchen and found 4 pairs of dirty socks roasting in the oven. Rookie opened his laptop before going to school and found the ID he used for his online games had been changed. Now he was me lose games, me hate chips. Pops looked into his laboratory and saw that his desk chair had been turned over. He felt like he'd escaped the night pretty well. Pretty well, that is, until he uh, opened his car door to go to work and found 4 cats and a dog fighting and tearing up the interior. They rushed out and almost knocked him over. He brushed himself off, started the engine, but he didn't drive away because squeaking sounds worried him. He couldn't tell where they were coming from until he sensed movement under his seat, and then a mouse crawled up his pants leg. Chapter 5. The Defenders Defend Themselves. Leo and Rookie returned from school, found the house in good order, and started carrying out a plan they'd hatched on their walk home. Leo relocated the kitchen table and took the tools he needed from his workshop while Rookie made quick trips to the electronics supply store and the sports equipment store. They completed and tested their setup with time to spare for Leo to prepare a batch of pancakes before Mom and Pops returned home. The boys were optimistic, but Mom and Pops were skeptical. But they knew the plan was ready to execute and they saw no reason not to do it. Anticipating a long and eventful night, Mom, Pops, and Leo went to bed early. Rookie didn't. He took the first shift for lookout duty, but no action arrived. The house stayed quiet, and he woke his brother at 2 a.m. for the second shift. Leo then sat in his bedroom desk, pinching himself to stay awake until at 3:14 a.m. The remote-controlled camera that Rookie had purchased showed a slight movement. The Brussels sprout they'd placed on the kitchen table had rolled a centimeter, and it was now being raised into the air. Leo flipped a switch he'd installed on his desk and heard the giant sucking sound. He flipped the second switch, which sounded the alarm in all the bedrooms, and the 4 defenders rushed toward the kitchen with Leo in the lead. Leo immediately reduced the power setting on his shop vacuum cleaner. Rookie saw what was on the table and said, "Well, ho, 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 and Merry Christmas to us all for this present." Mom and Pops arrived together, and Mom said, "Oh, Leo, please turn the vacuum completely off. We don't want to hurt him." Rookie raised his hand quickly and said, "Leo, stop, not yet." He ran to the wall and released mosquito netting that fell to the floor, and it surrounded the table and all of them. Then he secured the net to the floor with plates from Pop's barbell set that he'd piled in the corner. Then he ran to the front door, called Mud Pie in, and the 2 of them slid under the net and stood with the others. The second Leo turned off the vacuum cleaner, a loud squeak pierced their ears. They weren't sure what the squeak meant, but it sounded like disappointment. Bolt had fluttered the margins of his leaf, looked at each defender and Mud Pie, and surveyed the net that surrounded them. Pop smiled and said, "Well, Bolthead, you're welcome to eat that Brussels sprout now." Bolthead's features were exactly like Mud Pie's, except he was green, not red. He held the Brussels sprout in a cupped hand that he had formed on the right side of his leaf blade. He looked at the Brussels sprout and popped it into his mouth, but he gave no sign of chewing. Leo was standing on his side and noted how the vacuum cleaner's suction tube had left a round dent on the backside of the extraterrestrial central bulge. Mom said in a soft, caring tone, "Bolthead, are you feeling all right? We didn't want to hurt you, We just wanted you to stop the tricks. They could be dangerous. We know you and many from Planet Bread like to play jokes, and many of yours made us laugh as well as become annoyed. All of us here agree you won this game. But I've been thinking about your many skills, and I think it's a loss to the galaxy that you use them only for games and annoying others. Have you considered how your planning and acting skills could actually help others instead? Being a mother myself, I bet your mother would be pleased to see her child grow up and be a great help to others. Bolthead grunted a squeaky eh. He looked over at Mudpie and then back at Mom as she spoke. I'm suggesting you would have more fun if instead of seeking out happy families and tricking them, you sought out families and individuals facing problems and use your skills to help them. Many people on Earth, and I bet many flubs, are unhappy and don't feel good about themselves. They need someone to pay attention, give them importance, make them feel loved. Others, maybe some you know, need reassurance before they can move on from mistakes made in the past. All beings need to feel good about themselves and have hope for the future. Imagine a young boy who does poorly at school and has no confidence in himself. What if the mustached man you played a few days ago were to take that boy aside and tell him he'd had troubles in school himself, but things had eventually worked out well? The man could then become a helper. He could offer to help the boy with his schoolwork. Do you think such a boy might blossom and become happier in life? Happier because you play acted as a helper rather than a trickster? Or imagine a lonely old lady who feels nobody cares about her. Suppose you played the young girl as you did a few days ago. Suppose you stopped the old lady on the street, offered kind words such as simply, "I like your scarf," and then chatted about how to bake Brussels sprouts into the finest meal. That would warm the old lady's heart for weeks. Helping her would warm you too. If you applied your ingenuity, planning, and acting skills to help others, you'd make the galaxy a better place. That'd make you a winner in the greatest game, the game of life. Bolthead's eyes blinked rapidly. The ribs and veins in his leaf pulsed deep green. He looked at Mudpie and nodded. Mudpie's ribs and veins pulsed deep red. Mudpie fluttered the margins of his leaf and said, "What a simple but wonderful change that would be! Bolthead, would you become a friend of those in need?" Wow! That's the description of a winner, if I ever heard one. And I bet such new games would be the purest fun. And Bolthead, well, you could stay here and make this arm of the galaxy a better place. Why don't we go home to Bread? When mother, father, and all flubs recognize you become a friend of those in need, they'll declare you the whole galaxy's supreme winner. Rookie pulled up the mosquito net. The two flubs looked from one defender to another, nodded with the pleasant smiles already built into their faces, and both at the same moment said, "Thank you." Leo led them to the front door, and the family watched as Mudpie and Bolthead floated up to their tiny ship, shrunk to the size of butterflies, entered it, and sped out of sight in an instant. The end.